Have you ever sat in a room full of people and still felt completely invisible? You're there, smiling, nodding, maybe even laughing at the right moments. But deep down, you know something's missing. You leave the party or the gathering more tired than you arrived, and as you sit quietly with a cup of tea or look out the window, a strange peace settles in. You wonder, why did I even go? Why does it feel like being alone brings more joy than being with people these days? If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. And you're not broken. Something happens as we grow older. Life begins to whisper different things to us. Things we didn't hear when we were younger and always in a rush. At 60, 65, 70, it's not just about slowing down our bodies. It's about slowing down our minds, our obligations, our endless need to show up for others, even when we're running on empty. In this video, I want to talk with you about a simple but often misunderstood truth. Why avoiding people can actually bring you more peace, more clarity, and more purpose as you age. No, this isn't about bitterness or shutting the world out. It's about protecting your time, your energy, and your soul. Let's start with one of the biggest shifts we face as we get older: how we see time. When we were younger, time felt endless. We thought we had forever to mend relationships, chase goals, or put off that vacation or hobby. But at this stage of life, time starts to feel real, measurable, precious. Every morning becomes a small miracle. Every conversation, a choice. And we begin to realize that not everything and not everyone deserves a piece of that time. There's a quiet kind of power in understanding that. It doesn't mean we don't care. It doesn't mean we're cold or withdrawn. It means we've earned the right to spend our time intentionally. We've lived through decades of giving, showing up, and stretching ourselves thin. Now it's time to make space for what really matters. Not just the people who demand our attention, but the ones who deserve it. Not just the noise, but the moments of stillness that bring us home to ourselves. Think about how many times you've said yes when you wanted to say no. How many events you went to out of guilt, or how many people you kept calling just to keep the peace. That's not peace. That's pressure. And at this age, we've earned the right to let go of pressure. This brings us to something else we start to notice around this stage of life. Relationships don't stay the same, and neither do we. Have you ever looked back at someone you used to feel close to and wondered, where did we go wrong? Maybe it was a childhood friend, a cousin, or even one of your own children. You used to talk all the time. Now, silence. Sometimes coldness. And you wonder if you failed. But here's the truth that no one told us when we were younger. Not all relationships are meant to last a lifetime. People change. You've changed. And sometimes those changes carry us in different directions. It's not a tragedy, it's a transition. Just like seasons shift, so do connections. When I was younger, I thought being a good person meant being available to everyone. I remembered every birthday. I showed up at every event. I bit my tongue even when I was exhausted or hurt. I thought that was love. I thought that was loyalty. But in reality, I was pouring out of an empty cup and I didn't even know it. Now, I see things differently. Now I understand that true relationships are mutual. They fill you up as much as you fill them. They're not measured by how many times you call, but by how you feel when you hang up. Do you feel seen? Heard? Respected? If not, maybe it's time to step back. Some people drain us. Others nourish us. As we age, our emotional energy becomes just as valuable as our physical energy. And we must learn to protect both. Of course, it's not always easy. Letting go of relationships, especially those we've held on to for years, can feel like losing a part of ourselves. But what if it's not loss? What if it's clearing space for better things to come? It's not about blaming others or keeping score. It's about accepting the natural flow of life. Some people were meant to walk with us for a while and then step off the path. That's okay. Their chapter in your story has ended. Yours continues. And while we're here, let's talk about trust. Something that becomes more complicated the older we get. When we were young, we trusted easily. We believed in the best of everyone. We gave our time, our secrets, our loyalty freely. And sometimes that gave us deep, beautiful relationships. But sometimes it hurt. There's a unique kind of heartbreak that comes when someone you trusted, someone you stood by for years, turns away from you, or worse, betrays you quietly without explanation. And as we grow older, we carry those scars. They don't always hurt the way they used to, but they don't fully fade either. That's why trust becomes more sacred now. It's not something we throw around. It's something we give slowly, carefully, only to those who have shown they deserve it. That includes learning to trust ourselves. You know that little voice in your gut that says, something doesn't feel right? That's not paranoia. That's wisdom. That's experience talking. And at this age, it's time to listen to it. You don't need to justify your boundaries. You don't need to apologize for stepping back. If someone makes you feel small, anxious, drained, or dismissed, you don't owe them more time. You owe yourself peace. And that peace begins the moment you decide to protect what matters most: your time, your heart, and your energy. Now, if you've lived long enough to feel worn down by people who only take and never give back, then you've probably felt the shift we're about to talk about next. It's something you can't quite put your finger on, but it shows up in the way your shoulders relax when you're finally alone, and in the way your chest tightens when certain people walk into a room. It's the realization that the world we're living in now isn't the same world we grew up in. There used to be a rhythm to life that felt slower, more grounded. You could pop over to your neighbor's house unannounced, sit on the porch, and talk for an hour about nothing. You could count on Sunday dinners, handwritten letters, people looking you in the eye. There was time. There was space. There was connection. But somewhere along the way, the pace picked up. Technology exploded. Life got louder. Notifications started replacing conversations. And people, well, they got distracted. Even family time feels different now. It's rare to have a full, uninterrupted moment with someone you love. Everyone's checking their phones, rushing to the next thing, mentally somewhere else. You might be in the same room, but you're not really together. And that can leave us feeling isolated, even in the middle of a crowd. But here's something that's helped me find peace. You don't have to keep chasing the world just to feel like you belong in it. You get to choose a different pace, a slower one, a more intentional one where you say no to the rush and yes to the real. You don't have to keep showing up where you feel unseen. In fact, one of the greatest gifts of growing older is realizing you're allowed to create your own kind of life. If that means stepping back from people who don't make time for you, or environments that feel too noisy, too shallow, or just too much, that's okay. You're not falling behind. You're just finally moving at your own rhythm. And sometimes, that rhythm means choosing solitude over company. Now I know, solitude can sound like a scary word, especially if you've spent most of your life surrounded by people. But there's a difference between loneliness and solitude that many don't understand until later in life. Loneliness is the ache that comes from feeling unwanted, unheard, or forgotten. Solitude is the peace that comes from finally being enough for yourself. It's the quiet joy of a morning coffee with no interruptions. It's walking through nature and hearing your own thoughts for the first time in days. It's choosing silence not because there's no one to talk to, but because the silence is healing. I used to think being alone meant I was missing something. Now I see it as having something others often miss: space to breathe, reflect, and just be. Solitude has taught me more about who I am than any crowded gathering ever did. And here's the surprising part. It's made me a better friend, a better parent, a better person. Because when you learn to enjoy your own company, you stop needing others to fill the empty spaces. You show up not out of loneliness, but out of love. And the people who are meant to walk with you in this season, they feel the difference. That brings me to something that used to be hard to admit, but has become a quiet truth I live by now. There are some people you just need to stay away from. And that's not about hate. It's not about drama or revenge. It's about clarity. There are people who constantly bring negativity, who gossip, complain, blame, or manipulate, who only come around when they want something, who never ask how you're doing unless it benefits them. And maybe you've been tolerating them for years because you thought that's what you were supposed to do. But here's what I've learned. Peace is more important than politeness. You don't owe anyone access to your life, your energy, or your presence, especially if they leave you feeling worse after every interaction. At this stage, the best thing you can do for yourself isn't to keep every relationship alive. It's to honor the ones that are already life-giving, and to lovingly release the ones that aren't. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to argue. Just quietly step back, stop calling, stop showing up where you don't feel welcome or valued, create distance, and use that space to pour into yourself instead. Because life is too short to surround yourself with people who drain you. And it's too precious to be lived trying to please those who don't truly care. I want you to know that you are not the only one who feels this way. Not by a long shot. More and more, I hear from friends, neighbors, even strangers online, all in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, who are making the same choice. They're realizing they don't want big crowds, shallow conversations, or toxic obligations anymore. They want simplicity. They want real connection. They want peace. And they're choosing to let go of everything that stands in the way of that. So if you've been feeling guilty about stepping back, don't. You're not selfish. You're self-aware. You're not bitter. You're brave. You've earned the right to live this next chapter on your terms. You've earned the quiet. You've earned the calm. And you deserve to fill your life with people who love you for who you are. Not for what you do or what you give, or how much of yourself you sacrifice to make them comfortable. This isn't about giving up on people. It's about choosing the right ones. It's about building a smaller, safer, more sacred circle where mutual respect, kindness, and presence are the foundation. Where you can laugh, cry, sit in silence, or share your story without judgment. Where you feel seen, heard, and valued, exactly as you are. And maybe most importantly, it's about letting yourself belong to you. You've spent decades giving pieces of yourself away. Now it's time to gather them back, to remember who you are, to trust what you feel, and to create a life that feels like home, not for anyone else, but for you. You know, the older I get, the more I realize that the most powerful thing you can do for yourself isn't adding more to your life, it's letting go. Letting go of people who no longer see you. Letting go of expectations that were never yours to carry. Letting go of the idea that your worth is tied to how much you do for others. It took me a long time to understand this. I spent years, decades really, trying to be everything for everyone. The dependable one. The one who always showed up. The one who stayed silent so others could feel comfortable. But that kind of life wears you down. You start to disappear inside yourself. And one day you look in the mirror and ask, where did I go? The truth is, we were never meant to live like that forever. There comes a time when we have to stop performing and start living. And that starts with embracing where we are right now. This chapter of life, your 60s, your 70s, and beyond, it's not about proving yourself anymore. You've done that. You've worked hard, shown up, sacrificed, endured. This season isn't about doing more. It's about being more, being present, being peaceful, being true to who you really are. And the beautiful thing is, you get to write this chapter however you want. Maybe you want fewer people in your life, but deeper conversations. Maybe you want quieter days, but more meaningful moments. Maybe you don't want to travel the world, you just want to feel at peace in your own home. That's not small. That's sacred. So many of us were raised to believe that success meant busyness, that happiness meant having a full social calendar, that purpose meant always giving, even when we were running on empty. But now we know better. Success at this stage of life is peace. It's knowing who you are and not needing to explain it to anyone. It's choosing simplicity over noise, depth over distraction, and authenticity over approval. And if that means avoiding certain people, then so be it. It's not about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. You're not avoiding people because you hate them. You're avoiding the drama, the chaos, the guilt, the expectations. You're choosing peace. And peace isn't passive. It's powerful. Peace looks like saying no and meaning it. It looks like canceling plans that don't feel right. It looks like surrounding yourself with people who light you up instead of wear you down. It looks like waking up in the morning and not dreading who might call or text or knock on your door with one more thing to ask of you. Peace looks like freedom. I want to remind you of something that often gets lost in the noise. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to not be on all the time. You're allowed to want more for yourself, not in things, but in presence, in purpose, in real joy. Some people won't understand your shift. They might say you've changed, and you have. You've grown. You've learned what matters. You've learned that your time, your health, your energy, they're precious. You've learned that it's okay to be selective. That not every call needs answering. That not every door needs opening. That not every relationship is worth holding on to. And perhaps most of all, you've learned that you are enough even when you're alone. Because here's the truth. You're never really alone when you're at peace with yourself. The world may not tell you that. In fact, the world might try to convince you otherwise. It'll tell you to stay connected, stay involved, stay in touch. And yes, connection matters, but only when it's real. Only when it feeds your soul instead of drains it. So no, you're not the odd one out for wanting quiet. You're not antisocial for enjoying your own company. You're not bitter for walking away from people who no longer fit the life you want to live. You're wise. And the wiser we get, the more we understand that life isn't about how many people we have around us. It's about how we feel when we're with them. Do they lift you up? Do they listen without judgment? Do they leave you feeling fuller, not emptier? That's what matters now. And if you've been feeling unsure, if you've been wondering whether it's okay to set boundaries, to say no, to quietly drift away from those who make your heart feel heavy, then let me reassure you right now. It is more than okay. It is necessary. You deserve a life that feels safe and soft and sacred. One that gives you room to breathe. One that doesn't constantly demand more from you, but gently reminds you that you've already done enough. So live that life. Let yourself enjoy the sunrise instead of answering calls that can wait. Let yourself sit in silence without feeling the need to fill it. Let yourself say, "This is enough. I am enough." And if you're wondering what comes next, what to do with all this space you're creating by stepping back, let me tell you, you fill it with joy, with laughter, with nature, with art, with prayer, with music, with quiet afternoons and soft mornings. You fill it with peace, and you protect that peace like your life depends on it. Because in many ways, it does. You've earned this chapter. Write it in a way that makes you proud. And if you're watching this and feeling seen, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for showing up for yourself today. And thank you for sharing your wisdom, your presence, and your truth. If this message resonated with you, I'd love for you to share your thoughts in the comments. Let us know. What have you learned about peace and boundaries as you've gotten older? What have you let go of? And what has it brought into your life? And if you haven't already, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, Strong Elderly Life. We're building a space here that's all about wisdom, clarity, strength, and soulful living after 60. You belong here. Here's to the life that's waiting for you on the other side of letting go. Here's to peace, purpose, and the power of solitude. And here's to living your very best life, quietly, confidently, and completely on your own terms.